I went from construction worker to millionaire in 4 years, and I'll tell you how.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today I have Grant with me, and as you heard, it is amazing. The story from construction to millionaire. That's just not something that everybody can go around and about and saying in the podcast, and that's the reason why we have him here. We're trying to extract as much knowledge that we want, and thank you so much for coming. I appreciate having your time here and your expertise, and we're gonna try to dissect every little part of how you became so successful.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We contacted on Instagram, so that was cool, and it's nice to finally be here and be in person.
Awesome. That's amazing, man. I mean, how about we get started with who are you? Like, when for somebody that doesn't know you, like
Yeah.
who's Grant Warrington?
Um, I'm just like everyone else. That's what I like to say. I think we're all special. I used to say, oh, I'm no one special, but I am. We all are. But I'm no more special than anyone else. I was a guy that hated having a boss, despised it. I mean, I can feel it in my chest right now as I'm saying that. Um, that was my big why and why I wanted to do the things I did. I didn't want to have a boss anymore. I didn't want someone telling me how successful I could be in life. They determined that for me, and I hated it. It just really burned that. I'm like, no way, man. I'm going to decide my own success. So that's really what brought me to investing in real estate. And it started with single family houses, and then it really snowballed when we made the decision to jump into small apartment buildings.
Gotcha. And then I've heard this story multiple times. Start with single family and then go into multifamily. What was your first purchase, and what were you thinking when you took that leap of faith?
In single family?
Yes, in single family.
Um, you know, I'll back it up. Just a quick short story before this. I started in 2002, I think it was. I bought 3 houses. Nobody paid me. I had no education. I didn't know what I was doing. And quickly, every tenant owed me $5,000. I was buried. I had to declare bankruptcy. I was the only one in this, in those deals. I gave all the money back, or I gave it back to the bank, all the houses. And that was it. And I always knew I'd get back into it. I drank back then. I quit drinking in 2011 with the help of God. And that's where my life started to change. And when you take small little steps, your life will change, but you have to take those little steps. I knew I'd get back into real estate investing. Met my wife in 2014, and she's like, "Hey, I'm interested in real estate." And I said, "So am I. Look at all the books. Here's what I've done. Here's my failure, but I know I'm going to get back into it." And I started educating myself at that point. Had my mind right, and we really, I started listening to Bigger Pockets in October of 2014. We closed on our first single family home December, I think 15th of 2014. So we took action. I'm not one of those people that read books and planned every single thing out and watched these podcasts. And 3 years later, I'm still watching podcasts. We just jumped in. I just didn't know any better. They just told me buy a house. So I said, okay, I'll buy a house. And
Well,
we did.
What was it? A duplex, a fourplex?
Single family. It was
Just
a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, right in my backyard, right in our neighborhood. I mean, I could walk there. So we knew the area good. It was just a mess. It needed everything: new driveway, roof, electrical, plumbing, complete gut rehab. It needed everything. And, furnace, air conditioning. So we spent a lot of money on it. Roof. We spent a lot. We learned a lot of lessons, but, I started doing the work myself. And then I realized, like, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I wasn't handy. And, that's where we learned, hey, we need to hire somebody to do these things for us. And that was the biggest lesson we learned on that one. But we bought it for 65,000 back then. I think total we've put 30, maybe 35, 40,000 into it over the years. And we sold it a couple years ago for 170 175,000, 170 or 175,000. So it was a good investment. The market was very good, so we benefited from that, but it turned out to be a great investment. And we used some of that money to 1031 into a small apartment building, but that's a little farther ahead.
Gotcha. So you didn't refinance, you sold this property?
Yeah, correct. We didn't refinance that one at all. We kept that one as is, held on to it for what, 7 or 8 years, and then sold it.
Why sold it? Why not refinance it? What were you thinking?
We wanted out of the single family game at that point.
Okay, so you had already evolved.
Correct.
Into, okay.
Our game plan shifted. And that's one thing, like, I want people to understand too. Like, when you start out, buy anything you can, do whatever you can to get into real estate. You don't need to buy 100-unit complex, just wherever you can start, right? Wherever you're at. I didn't have a lot of money, so that's where we started. But it's okay for your game plan to shift. I wanted to own 1,000 single family rentals. That's what I knew. And that's what I thought I could do. So that's where I was at. And that was my goal. And then all of a sudden we realized, like, our goal was to cash flow $10,000 a month, right? That's pretty much everybody's goal. Like, that would be great if we could do that. And my wife's like, with the debt we have on these properties, we would need like 50 single family homes to cash flow $10,000 a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 50. We'd gotten up to 11 in 2 years. And I had a full-time job, and I'm like, there's no way I can do 39 more, finding, buying, rehabbing, and then refinancing. That had become part of our strategy, the Burr method. So I'm like, there's just no way I can do that. So that's when we decided, that's it. We're going to jump to small apartments.
Wow.
But it took a minute to get there. It wasn't overnight, but your plan can change.
Yeah. No, I bet it has to change, because there's no way you're managing 50 single family units where you could just buy a 50-unit apartment.
Correct. Yeah. And that sounds overwhelming to people, but I want them to know it's not, because we own 4 properties today, and that's a total of 41 units. So 4 properties, that's not that scary. One is a duplex that we own. We've hung onto that duplex. It's a side-by-side townhome style duplex. We can split those properties up and sell them individually, but we own it as one. We can sell it as one as well. So we like that. So we kept that duplex, and then we own 3 small apartment buildings. So really, with a few purchases, we got to financial freedom. And we hit those numbers and those goals that we had set up. But we did it with those single families. What we would do is, when we started, we would buy properties any way we could that we could buy them without a mortgage. So we bought them on 0 interest credit cards. We took out personal loans. I sold my boat, my truck, my pool table, anything we could do to buy these things. And then what we would rehab them. We'd put tenants in place, and then we would refinance them. But we would use a commercial loan. It's a blanket loan with a credit union. And we'd package all 3 properties together, and we'd get a big check. We'd pay off a little bit of the crazy debt that we had accumulated. And we'd get that big check, and we'd go out and we'd buy more. And then, when we were still doing the single family thing, we had investors with us that would buy the houses for us. We'd give them, we'd pay them back interest. And, our goal, 6 months, after 6 months, we'd have our plan accomplished, and we would refinance all 3 of those properties that we'd purchased and then get another check. So we had about 125,000 at that point sitting in the bank. And we're like, okay, that was like 2017. We're like, okay, we're done with single family homes. And that's when we made the jump to apartments.
That's what we're saying. But even with the single families, you were already like tapping waters into commercial, like loans and commercial real estate.
Correct. Yeah. So we were familiar with that. Yes. Yeah. We were using the commercial loans. They're easier. A residential loan, a loan on a house is so difficult to get. And these commercial loans were much easier because they looked at the property and what the properties are doing. Right. and they base their decision off of that. Not so much on me personally, my financials, but what's the property doing? So that just made it a lot easier.
Okay, so with that purchase of these properties that you were just trying to refinance into a blanket loan, how do you then, were you using that equity, that money that you were pulling out to then invest it into bigger complexes?
Yeah, correct. Any money we got in a refinance, we always use to move forward. To buy more properties.
Okay,
So
how are you finding those deals?
well, I can tell you about our first apartment deal. Is that what you want to talk about? The transition?
Yeah. Let's talk about that one.
The funny thing is it's not sexy, it's not cool, it's not a great story. Everybody thinks that there's some secret out there to do this, and there's really not. It's all about conversations. You just have to have enough conversations to find these people that are willing to sell buildings. I teach a workshop on that. How to find off-market small apartment complexes. And what I did was I was in a single family house. We had decided that, we're buying small apartments going forward. And I said, I'm just going to tell everybody, because that's what they say on these podcasts. Tell everybody you know. So I was in the basement of one of our single families. I was getting the rental inspection done by the city. And the city inspector was in there. And I said, I was embarrassed to say it because we didn't own any apartment buildings. And we were really small. We were just starting out. But I said, hey, we're looking to buy apartment buildings. Do you know anybody that has any, that owns any? And he said, yeah, you know what? I know this woman in Trenton. That's my hometown, was my hometown. And she owns like 70 units in summer apartments. Why don't you call her? And I said, okay, great. Now, he didn't give me her number. He just gave me her name. So, it's up to me. It's up to you. It's up to everybody. Do the due diligence and find out the phone number. And that's what I did. I found her phone number and I called her. And I said, hi, my wife and I own properties, in Trenton. We live in Trenton. And I know you own apartments. I was wondering if you want to sell any. And she hesitated for a minute. She's an older lady. And she said, no, reach out to these 4 apartments, these 4 owners of these 4 buildings. They do a shitty job running their buildings and they might want to sell. And that was it. And I was like, okay,
4
sounds
leads.
good. 4 more leads, right? So normally normal people are just going to say, well, she doesn't want to sell, whatever. I don't want to do that. I mean, she didn't give me the phone numbers. So I had to find the phone numbers. I reached out to all 4 of them. One of them I actually knew. He owned a liquor store right by the apartment building he owned. So I knew the guy. So I went into his liquor store and I said, hey, I understand you own the apartment next door. And he said, yeah. I said, have you ever thought of selling it? And he said, yeah, I would be interested in selling. And it was a 20-unit apartment building. And that was our first building. So, I mean, when I say tell everybody it's the truth. It all started for me just letting that guy know at that rental inspection that we're looking to buy small apartments. And that led to our first 20-unit off-market apartment building. And it was also seller financing. So he provided the financing and, we negotiated the deal between the 2 of us. And the building needed a ton of work. We bought it for $625,000. It needed everything. It was a mess. It was a complete mess. I mean, we had to rip down walls, rebuild walls because they were rotted from water leaks. It was bad. And when I say it was bad, I mean, it was bad. But
what discount did you buy it at?
I don't know. I don't think we really bought it at a discount, to tell you the truth. No, because his average rents were $490 back then, and that was low. We were anticipating they should be $650 back then. Now our average rents, I think, are $840 in that building. So we've really turned it around. I mean, he had signs up that said, if you don't pay your rent, the city will shut off the water. He had that posted on the mailboxes. So it was in bad shape. They were in big trouble. He was, I think, 2 weeks away from losing the building. We went under contract with him. but he actually had already lost it for back taxes. And he had a 2-week window to pay $50,000. My wife convinced him finally, like, look, this is gone. You're going to lose it. And he paid it. And then he was able to sell it to us, or he would have lost the whole thing. So it was in bad shape. So discount, looking back now, it was a great deal. But when I first reached out to him, he wanted $125,000 down. And my wife and I are like, we can't do that. That's every dime we have. And this thing needs so much work. We just can't do it. So we let it go a year. We just said, no, we can't. We waited a year.
That same guy for the liquor store.
Yes. Yep. The same one. We waited a year. We're like, this isn't it. We can't afford it. I tried talking him into, how about 80,000? Nope. I need 125,000. I have bills I need to pay. And, I'm jumping back and forth in the timeline here, but, finally a year later, I said to my wife, this was now 2017, I think is when I initially talked to him. 2018, the summer of 2018 is when we went under contract. Cause I said, if not this, then what? Where's that perfect deal out there that isn't going to need any work? That we're going to get at a bargain. Like, where is it? It doesn't exist. So if not this, then what? And we said, all right, let's do it. So we told him, okay, we'll do it. And what we did then was we borrowed another 50,000 from a personal, a private investor that we had. And then we took out 58,000, on our home equity line of credit. So now we had $108,000. And then I'm sure there was 0% interest credit cards or things like that. And then we'd also rehab out of cash flow. So once the cash flow started coming in, we would use that money. We didn't eat off it. We didn't take it for ourselves. We let it sit because then we'd have to do a rehab out of it. So that's how we were able to do it. So, in hindsight, it was, that's our cash cow right now. That's our money machine, but it took a little while to get there. But, like I said, it was seller financing, 5% interest, 30-year amortization. That's what I really needed because I needed the payments to be low. So I needed that amortization over 30 years. He gave us that, but he wanted the balloon payment was like 2 years.
Oh,
and we said, we're fine with that. And actually 16 months later, we refinanced him out. And the building now was worth $1,030,000. And we took a loan out for $800,000, and that gave us a check for $300,000 tax-free, back to us. So now we have 300 grand, and then we went after building number 2. And that's the proceeds we used to find building number 2.
So let me take a step back. When you were looking to move into property number 2, everything was okay with property number 1, right?
No.
No?
No, it was at a good point, but back then, we've done probably 36 rehabs in 3 years on all of our properties. So, I mean, we were nonstop rehabbing these properties. So all 20 units needed to be rehabbed. When we bought the 20-unit building, 5 were vacant. So we started right away on those 5, trying to get those up and running. And then the problem was the average rents were $490. We needed to get those up. It had long-term tenants in a building. And here's something else that I like to tell people. Anytime someone says, I have long-term tenants here, that means the rent is very, very cheap, too cheap, and they probably don't do a lot of maintenance. Okay. Cause that's always the trade-off between tenant and landlord. I'll keep your rent cheap, but you're on your own. Don't call me. And that's what happened at this building. So the people there for the 490 aren't the people that are going to live there at 650.
Yeah.
They just aren't, right? Because they weren't screened properly. They probably shouldn't have been living in that building in that city. It's just the way it is, but the rent was so cheap. That's why they lived there. So that means we had a bad tenant base. And fast forward to today, we only have 2 tenants that still live there that we haven't rehabbed their property. We've rehabbed all 18 units in that building. But after 16 months, maybe we had 10 rehabbed. possibly. I don't remember the number. But what we were doing is, as we were rehabbing, we were replacing, there's 2 windows per unit. So if we had 10, I think that's the correct number, because we had half of the windows done. We got that check for 300,000. We used a portion of that to pay for all the other windows in the building. And then out of that 300, we did some more rehabs. We did some other things on that existing building, and then used the remainder to go forward and buy the next building.
Okay. So, but for this property, when would you say it was a good, let me rephrase this. When
Yeah.
did you feel comfortable moving forward with this second transaction?
I would say right at that refinance point, we knew it was making money. It was, we were able to take, like, I don't know, maybe $1,000 a month out of that building. Because remember, we had to rehab. We had to take all the cash flow and rehab other property. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have much. We didn't have any, really.
So you were cash flowing the entire time?
Yes, we were cash flowing the entire time, because when we did take over, no one was paying the previous owner. But day one, when we took over, we met with all the tenants and we told them all, here's the 2 important things. Take care of the property, take care of your unit, and pay your rent on time. If you don't pay your rent on time, you can't stay. And everyone paid us. Remember, I told you had the note, you need to pay your rent, you're going to get your water turned off. Yeah. Everyone paid us. No one, we didn't have to, we haven't taken anyone full eviction in that whole building. We've had to just maybe start the process here and there, but everyone has paid us. All those tenants have paid us because they knew we were serious. With the old owner, he would give him, he would let him go. He would give him a grace period. He would, they'd say, oh, I can't pay you this month. I'll pay you next month. And he'd say, that's fine. The problem is nobody's catching back up. You're not going to work, well, I work 40 hours this week and I can't pay. Now I'm going to work 80 hours next week to try and catch up. That's not going to happen. So once these people get behind, you're just screwed. You're screwing yourself, and you're really screwing them, because you're allowing them to kick the can down the road for what's going to inevitably happen. Is they're going to have to leave. So when you put rules in place, people take it more seriously, and it's more of a benefit to both of you.
Question. In your refinance, because you're telling me that you bought this property on seller finance.
Yep.
So it was a 2-year balloon. It was a 30-year amortization. First of all, how did you figure that out? If it was that was your first seller finance transaction, right?
Yeah.
And did the owner of the liquor store knew that, or did you have to explain everything to him?
We basically did everything. We had to do everything for him, and we had to do everything for us. Yes, we had to explain everything. Here's what we're looking to do. Do you agree with that? The 125,000 is what he was firm on. The other thing he was firm on is, he said, yeah, we'll do seller financing. But his father was older. He's like, because I wanted 5 years. And he's like, we can't wait that long. So those are the 2 big things he was firm on. Everything else was negotiable. So that's the cool thing with seller financing. It's all up to you. You two determine the deal. There's no book of seller financing. You have to do that. You can make any terms you want. That's the beauty of it. You can determine the interest rate. You just pick it. That's all we did. Interest rates were below 5 at that point. So we thought, we're paying a little higher interest rate, 5%. And he said, yeah, that's fine. I told him, 30-year AM. He never said a word about it. Probably didn't really register what or why I needed it.
Right.
Looking back now, it just wasn't a big deal. It was a great deal for him because he got to make those payments. We made those payments timely and then cashed them out, 16 months later. So he didn't have to take that whole lump sum, for tax purposes in 1 year. So
right. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you let him know before you were going to cash him out?
Yeah, we did. We communicated with him the whole time. We're, the liquor store is right next door. We'd ask, hey man, we can't figure this problem out. What do you think? And so we always would talk to him about things. But But getting back to the seller financing, we had no idea what we were doing.
Who exactly? Who did you
Yeah.
contact? Like, how does that happen on your first deal? Because you could have all the theory, but the practice only happens when you actually throw yourself out
Yes.
there.
So what we did was a title company. We contacted a title company. And here's the thing to remember too. If you're ever buying on seller financing, never give the owner any money. You have to give the title company. The title company holds all proceeds, just when you buy a house, right? It's the same thing. So we gave the title company the $125,000 down payment, not the owner, because you give the owner money, not this gentleman, but there's people out there that, are going to take your money. So we ran everything through the title company. I believe they helped us. They answered questions for us. They'll do that. Just reach out to a good title company. If one doesn't want to cooperate with you, reach out to another one. And then I think we got, I had a friend who is a mentor to me, and I think he gave me some contracts and things like that.
Okay.
But I would recommend probably, I would say the best advice would be to get a lawyer and talk to a lawyer about it and have the lawyer draw up the contract, because when you get these contracts and things like that at our local RIA meeting or a friend, if you're a real estate investor, chances are you're passing around documents, things like that. It just happens. But do you know what they say? You know what I mean? Truly. And that's the thing. So for the first one, that's probably the best advice now looking back. Luckily it was fine and we didn't need anything, no problems came up at all. But we didn't have a lot of money. So that was our best option back then.
I think so interesting to highlight that the first seller finance commercial deal that you ever made was completely not knowing what you were doing, right? And you still figure it out. And there's people that are waiting for somebody to come in and hold their hands through the process when that's just not going to happen. Like, nobody cares. You have to go and get it yourself.
Yeah. And that you're 100% right. And I do some reels, on Instagram, and one of them is, do you really need a mentor? Because I get people that reach out to me and are like, hey man, will you be my mentor? And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Nothing. I want to get started. Well, you don't need a mentor. You need problems. You need to do things, take action, get some problems. And that's when you need help. And that's when mentors and things like that love helping and reaching out and things like that, because you're taking action. There's so many people that take zero action, but just want time. Unfortunately, most of us only have so much time. That's how I found my mentor. I was taking action and I got stuck and I didn't know what to do next. And I found this guy and he was willing to give me some advice. He told me, do these 5 things. I don't remember what they are, but do these 5 things and then come back to me. I came back to him. He goes, dude, nobody ever does what I tell them. He's like, you're the first person that's ever done what I told them. And he's like, wow, that's cool. So to him, he's like, okay, it's worth it investing my time in this guy. And then the other thing, I didn't bother him. I would, when I took my next step and got stuck again, I'd reach out to him. And that's how we developed that relationship. I really valued his time. And I made sure in my head, I said, I want to be around him more because he's doing big things. But my way to get around him is to take action and do things so that I can reach out to him. And that's what got me moving. And that was one of my big motivators too, was to do things so I could get around him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now let's talk about your present. What are you currently working on? What's the name of your company? Because you're now working at a scale. I don't think you're buying like duplexes or single family anymore. You're only working on, what's your specialty?
Yeah. So small apartments right now is what we focus on. And small apartments are 5 units up, because you can get commercial loans on those. So that's what we like to focus on. And what I'm doing right now is I'm teaching people, because like me back in 2016, and 17, we thought, oh, we could never buy apartments. Only rich people buy apartments. We don't have any money. How would we ever do that? And that's not true. You can buy small apartments. And luckily for us, we just figured it out. It took us years of figuring it out. We made that decision in 17. We're only buying small apartments. January 2019 was when we closed on that 20 unit. So it took a while. That whole time I was studying, watching podcasts, reading books. For the small apartments, I was ready because I had to prepare myself. So 2 years of preparing for that. So what I did now is I built a course. It's called the Apartment Buying Blueprint. Right here behind me, you can see it. And that teaches people how to go from owning a few single family rentals to buying small apartments. And I go through everything from A to Z. And the whole goal from that is to get you educated. Whether you want to manage or not, I go through all aspects of it. Because I was the director of operations for a property management company and I managed over 800 units. So I'm pretty hip on what I'm talking about with management. And I just like to cover all that and repairs, materials we use, everything. Because when we bought that 20 unit, there was nobody out there telling us like, hey, use click plank flooring. It's better than glue down because of this. Like, there's no one out there saying that or telling me like, what's the difference in cost? And that's what I started making videos on. Like, hey, we used click plank flooring here. Here we use glue down LVP. And I explain the difference and why we did this and the cost. I go through a $10,000 apartment rehab. And I tell people, in the course and on Instagram, you can follow me there too, at Grant Warrington. I break down all the cost of repairs. And in the course, I'll go over all the materials, where we buy them, item numbers, and how you can do it as well. So that's what I'm passionate about, because I know there's guys like me that are out there that don't know the next step. And what I did in my career was I copied. I found my mentor. He told me, this is what you need to do. And I did it. I just copied. I'm not brilliant. I'm not an engineer. I'm a construction worker. I was a crane operator for 24 years. And I just copied. So I thought, why not just create a course where people can just copy what I did and be successful? And that's what I did. And that's what I'm passionate about now, is just helping people make that next jump, because we're truly financially free today. And we just moved to Florida because of small apartments.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So like, let's bring it back to the management, because I think is one of the, if not the most important part of buying properties for commercial real estate. And especially, I mean, I guess at what point would you say like 60 units you can finally bring someone a property management in the unit? But like anything below that, how are you managing that, right? Your 5 unit, your 20 unit, they don't have the cash flow to bring someone on site. What does that look like?
Correct. Yeah. And no matter what you buy, everything's going to be a little tight. So, don't just assume you're going to buy a single family home and be rich, or 3 of them and be rich, or you're going to buy a 5-unit apartment building and be rich. It takes time, and you need to use that money to buy more real estate. And that's how you become wealthy. It's over time and acquiring more real estate. So that's why we were broke the whole time, because we were always buying more real estate. But the property management side, we managed on our own because of that, because there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone. So we thought, we'll just do it ourselves.
Do you still manage all those properties yourself?
Yeah, 41 units. And the reason we still do remotely now is because it'd be about $30,000 to $40,000 just for someone to manage those properties. And they're all rehabbed. They don't take a ton of work. So we hired somebody, boots on the ground, to oversee those properties. And my wife handles all the management side. So that person reports to my wife, and it's going really well. So that's why we did it. But what I suggest to people is 2 different avenues. If you have a good W-2, you make a lot of money, don't quit your job, not right away. Stay in your job, supercharge your investing by lowering your personal expenses and using that money to buy real estate, and put a property management company in place right away, because you're a high income earner. You don't need to mess around with managing these properties. Get used to that smaller cash flow because you have management in place, and just go out and buy as many properties as you can. And eventually you're going to hit that number where you can retire and quit that W-2, and you could do it quicker using your W-2. Now, if you
Mm.
don't have any money, like we didn't, maybe you self-manage. I mean, you got to suck it up. And that's what we did. And we just learned that way. We've learned a ton doing it, but going forward, our ultimate goal would be to any new properties where we buy. The goal would be to give the management away because we don't want to own a management company. In the beginning, we thought we would. We thought we'll own a property management company. This will be great. But the more properties you get, especially if you have tougher properties in tougher neighborhoods, you have a tougher tenant base, they can knock you out of the game quickly. Your tenants, your best thing and your worst thing. So if you have tenants that cause a lot of problems, violence, things like that, you're really going to have issues. So we try to buy in better neighborhoods, better clientele, a better tenant base, and you'll have less problems theoretically. But no matter what, you're going to have problems. You have a bunch of people living under the same roof, and you'll have problems. But those are my suggestions wherever you're at. Whether you have a lot of money with your W-2 or you don't have a lot, you have options.
Let's talk about for a second about scalability. So I'd imagine every time you refinance, you could always go bigger. Where does that, because I'd imagine once you feel like you found the cash flow that you were looking for, do you still feel the need to go and get and scale more, or at what point your priorities change?
Well, I'll be honest. I remember because I like to practice gratitude, or else because I realize I've been miserable building my portfolio the whole time because I'm always looking. Oh, if I could just get another property, if I could just get another building, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And then I get it, and it's like, okay, I need another one. That 10,000 a month cash flow is a great number to start, but pretty soon people are going to realize that's not a lot of money. You're not going to live on the beach. You're not going to drive his and her Mercedes Benz.
Yeah.
You're not going to vacation everywhere. Once you start increasing your expenses, you're going to get right back to where you started. So that's what people don't realize. That's what I try to tell people because that's what we learned, right? That's where we're at. We're doing good. We're financially free. We were able to move. We live in a great place, but is it the life we want to live? No, it's not. So, I'm looking at now 20,000 cash flow a month is more in line where we want to be.
I see.
So the bar moves, but again, I don't want to be miserable looking out into the future. I want to look where I'm at now and be grateful because I want to look back where I started, right? It's the book, The Gap and the Gain. It's a great book. It teaches you about that. And I look at where I'm at now and I look back to where I started. And I'm like, if I'd have told that person, if I'd have told Grant back in 2014, one day you're going to own 41 units, 3 apartment buildings and a duplex, and you're going to cash flow over $10,000 a month, I would have been, oh my gosh, dude, sign
I'm
me.
ready
I'll do
for it.
whatever it takes. Yeah, I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes. And now, right, you can't be miserable because I'm where I'm at now. I just got to readjust and go, man, I'm grateful for how far I've come. And I'm excited to build out into the future. So, it's not like we've gotten to a point where we've said, oh, we're just happy where we're at. I want to lead a big life, and some people don't, and that's fine too. It's just all up to you. But I want a vacation around the world. I want to lead a big life. I want my wife um, to enjoy things too. I want to enjoy things with her, travel, all kinds of different things. And that's why we did it. So, and then the other thing I love too is we can do this until you're 80, 90 years old, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's not like construction where I'm punching a time clock. I start at 6 a.m, right? And I'm working 7 days a week. I work from a computer, and that's our goal. Work from a computer and a cell phone anywhere in the world. That's my number one goal. That's what, if it doesn't align with that, I don't do it.
I see what you're saying. And now, I guess, what are your biggest takeaways from everything that you have done so far? Let's start with that.
Takeaways. Like what? Give me elaborate a little
We
bit
could
on it.
say, what are your biggest mistakes?
Um, it's I would say maybe starting out when I first started in the early 2000s, not being educated, not having my life right, like the drinking and not having my life in order. I think those were huge mistakes. But I don't like to say mistakes. I like to say learning experiences. Like I learned from those and I capitalize
Yeah.
on those. I
Yeah.
don't ever blame anyone. And I try to, I don't even want to blame myself. Um, but some things I've learned along the way, they're just unavoidable pitfalls. Like we bought that second property we bought that off market too. And that was an 11 unit building. We cambered the drains like we're supposed to. You always hear, and I tell everybody on podcasts, camera drains, whether you're buying a single family home or an apartment building, camera the main drain line from the building to the city main. And you want to make sure there's no breaks in the pipe. We did that on that 11 unit. And the plumber did the best he could, we thought, and didn't see any issues. So we did what we were supposed to. Turns out, though, there was breaks in the pipe, ended up costing us, long story short, $27,000. So was it a mistake? I mean, I don't know. We learned from it, but it cost us a lot of money. So what do they say? People call them seminars, right? Like you go to school and you pay money to learn these things. Well, we pay money and learn it in the field.
Yeah.
It's like a seminar, right? So that was an expensive lesson, but we learned that one. So I think there's things like that along the way, and those are things I try to share with people. Like, man, here's how we got beat up on this one, and here's how you can avoid it.
Is there anything people that are getting into multifamily should know that from your experience should be the main thing and the main concern of them?
Yeah, I think buy for cash flow, especially today, you need to be very careful of it. I always tell people you want to see, like in my course, I have a deal analyzer, and I tell people like you want to see like $100 per unit per month. That's a good place to start. And then I want to see that I can increase rents and I can add to that. But if it's not cash flowing, you need to be very, very concerned, and you should be very good at what you do and have an excellent plan to cash flow that. Because I only bring that up is because we bought an 8 unit, our third building. That's the one we bought with a 1031 exchange. That one was not cash flowing. But we had a lot of money to put down because of the 1031 exchange, and the rents were $719, the average rents. And we knew day one we could come in and increase those rents to $850. The rent should have been $1,000, but we knew, hey, we can just bump these rents. And that's what we did. We had a track record. We showed the bank, hey, here's the rent comps. Like this is grossly undervalued. Again, it needed everything. It was in bad shape. But we knew we could do it, and we did it, and we accomplished that. But today, just make sure you're cash flowing off actual in-place numbers, not projected numbers, what a broker will tell you, or an owner. You don't want to take that advice. Just make sure it cash flows today.
And I don't want to put you in the spot, but what's your relationship with brokers?
Very good. I've actually never bought a deal from a broker, believe it or not, but I have good relationships with them. I respect their time, value them. I recommend them, because I bought 20 unit and 11 unit off market, and an 8 unit I bought off the MLS. And then the duplex we bought through a realtor as well. So I've never actually bought from an owner, but again, I respect their time. I recommend them. I've gone out to lunch with them, golfed with them, great communications. The other thing is, one day we might sell some of these buildings, maybe all of them, and upgrade into a larger property. So they know that, so they want to keep that communication out there as well. But it's like anything, there's really good and some that aren't that great, and you just gravitate towards the nice ones, respect their time, and that's it.
Yeah. What does Grand have for the future? What's the future look like for you?
For me, I'm real excited about the education. I'm real excited about teaching people that this is something they can do too. I was that landlord that owned a few single family rentals, and that's who I'm talking to. You can go to small apartments. You can make the jump. And I'm excited to help people because I've done it, and it sucked, and I was scared to death doing it. But now looking back, I built this course going, it's not as scary now that I look back on it. So that's what I like. And that's what I'm looking to do, is just to help people with it and educate people through my Instagram. They can follow me there as well, at Grant Warrington. It's the one with the blue check. So make sure, there's a lot of imposters out there. So just make sure it's that one.
Cool, man. Is there anything else we should know about you that it's going on?
No, I think that's it. I just moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. That's a pretty big one. So I'm loving this. We lived in Detroit, in the Detroit area. And we're sick of the winters. So we just made this move. My wife and I are like, look, we built this business. Why are we staying here? Why don't we just get out? And we did. So that's one thing I like to let people know, is I never started out thinking, well, we're going to move to Florida, or we want to do this or that, or have this happen. We just bought a rental, and I just believed. I just watched podcasts and thought, well, that'll be us one day, and you just believe. And I remember us asking each other, is it going to work? And I'm like, it has to. Look at these other people that have done it.
Yeah.
My mentor, right? Like it worked for him. It has to work for us. And just find some people, copy, and you never know where your life is going to be in 5 years. And we are the perfect example of that, man. Construction worker to millionaire in 4 years. And now we live in paradise, man. It's really incredible, but you just got to do the work. Give a little bit of your time up, and this can be you too. I'm as special as you, but no more special. And that's what I want people to know.
That's amazing, man. Thank you so much for talking to us. And no, I appreciate all your insight. I know it's a lot of information. It's super valuable, and I can't wait to check out your course.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And thanks again for having me on.
Guys, if you made it this far, you probably know that this is a good information to sign up for a course. Just find yourself and surround yourself with people that you want to be like. And if you made it this far, subscribe, hit the like button. I'll see you guys on the next one.